This is the Templates Creation 101 session with Chessie Alleman, Technical Trainer with DocuSign University. Chessie, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Templates 101. My name is Chessie Alleman, and I'm a technical trainer here at DocuSign. And if you were on the DocuSign 101 session earlier with your school, then you likely recognize my voice. Speaking of that DocuSign 101 session, I'm sure everyone is aware that today's training is a part of a training series. So right now we are on our second out of 4 foundational trainings that we have scheduled with your school. If you were not able to attend DocuSign 101, I highly recommend going back and revisiting the recording and the slide deck. The recording should have been made available to you all for your access, because a lot of the contents and subjects that we talk about today are going to build upon contents and subjects that we learned in DocuSign 101. Looking forward, our next session will be Power Forms 101, where we talk about taking a template and actually making it self-service for your recipients. And then we do also have an Admin 101 session scheduled where we'll go through some of the administrative functions of your account. Now, in addition to the foundational trainings, Carrie mentioned those working sessions that we can get scheduled with your school. Those are going to be a great opportunity for you to work hands-on in the application, side by side with someone from your professional services team, so that you can ask any questions and thoroughly build out a use case using the knowledge that you've gained from these trainings. As always, the slide deck and the recording will be distributed to you after class. Now, just a reminder, you do have 2 DocuSign points of contact here. We have Carrie Davey, who's on the line today. She is leading the charge for your school's implementation with DocuSign. And then eventually you're also going to meet Jesse Morgan. He is a senior technical product consultant. He'll be brought in to help lead those working sessions that we talked about earlier. So because we are using Zoom, a couple of housekeeping tips here. It would be helpful if you remained on mute unless you have a question. That way we make sure that we have a great recording for folks to listen to later. Of course, if you have a question, I would love for you to ask it. You can ask either in the chat box. I have that open on another monitor. Feel free to send your questions in at any point in time. You do not need to wait until the end of a topic or the end of the whole class. Additionally, if you have a lengthier question or a question that you want to ask out loud, you can feel free to unmute. I will be pausing periodically and asking if there are any questions, so you can unmute at that point. Or if you have a question during a topic, there is a raise hand option in reactions, and that's really helpful for me, so that way we're not talking over one another. If I see that your hand is raised, then you can go ahead and unmute. So let's get into our learning objectives. We'll start from the ground up here. We'll work through creating a template together. We'll create both a static template as well as a dynamic template, and we'll talk about the difference. We'll then use a template to send out an envelope. And then we'll wrap up with talking about some ways that you can manage your template library once they're built out. So let's start with that introduction to templates. So what exactly is a template in DocuSign? I'm sure we're all familiar with the term template just from other software applications or applications that you use. But a template in DocuSign is a blueprint for repeatable envelopes. So if you find yourself sending the same envelopes over and over again, it's going to be in your best interest to create a template to streamline that use. Inside of a template, you can store specific documents, recipient roles and actions, customized email subject and email messaging, and last but not least, all of those fields on your document. So by pre-packaging all of this into a template, when you go to use that template, all you'll need to do is plug in the names and emails of your specific recipients, and then the rest is ready to go. So it will drastically cut down on the time it takes to send an envelope. And that's one of the main benefits you can see here, is to speed up the sending process. Templates also help with reducing the risk of errors. If everything is prepackaged into a template, you won't forget to include that specific line in the email message, or you won't forget to add that certain field to the document because it's already there as a part of the template. Templates can also help to create a consistent sending experience. This is because you can actually share templates with others on your account. So if you have a very specific use case, for example, sending out new offer letters to candidates for employment, and you want that experience to be the same regardless of the candidate or regardless of who is sending out the offer, you could create a template and share it with all of the folks on your account who are going to be sending out offers to make sure, again, that it is a consistent experience. So not everyone on the account will have access to templates. It does depend on how you are added by your administrator. So there are technically 4 different levels of access to templates, and you will be assigned one of these levels. The first is none. So these individuals will not even see templates on the account. They have no access at all. There's use. These individuals have the ability to use a template to send out an envelope, but they cannot create their own templates or share templates with others. So the only way that they can use templates is if they've been shared with them by other people. There's creates. These individuals can create their own templates and use those templates, but they're not able to share templates with others. And lastly, share. This is the highest level of access. These individuals have the ability to do everything. So create, use, and share. So again, this may not be particularly important just yet. However, once you all get added to your school's production account, you may notice that you are added with different levels of access. So if you realize that maybe you need more access than what you have, you can always reach out to your school's administrator to request that elevated permission. So when it comes to templates, there are actually 2 different ways that a template can be used to send an envelope. The first is to use a template. This means that you have a static document that is not changing. So the document is always going to be the same regardless of who is filling it out. For example, let's say that before we even had DocuSign, we would print out, 100 copies of a course withdrawal form. It's exactly the same course withdrawal form. We're just printing it out 100 times, and we're putting those papers on the desk of our, registrar's office, for example. And whenever a student needs to withdraw from a course, they need to come into the registrar's office, pick up one of those copies, and fill it out with their information. Now, that's a great use case for a template in DocuSign to use a template. It's the same course withdrawal form. We're going to build out this template in DocuSign. And when we send it, it's just going to go to a different student each time or a different advisor each time. Now, on the flip side, there may be instances, however, where you need to customize the document before you send it out using DocuSign. For example, with an offer letter, offer letters are likely going to be different for each candidate, right? We might want to include their salary information, their benefits information, when is their start date, so on and so forth. So in this case, we could customize the offer letter outside of DocuSign, plug in all of those details, then upload the offer letter document into an envelope and apply a template. When you apply a template, you're applying the template's structure onto that customized version of the document. So that way things like the recipient workflow, the fields, and the messaging are all going to be applied. And I know that sounds a little bit abstract at this point in time, but I promise we'll see both of these methods in action in today's class. So before we even go in and we create a template, I want to just show you the benefit of templates. I'm going to log in really quickly and send out an envelope using a template that I already made before class. So I'm going to pull up my DocuSign account here. And let me zoom in a little bit. And if I want to get to the templates tab, I can select templates at the top. And here I can see a list of all of the templates that I have created. And today I'm just going to show you a quick demonstration using this non-disclosure agreement template that I have set up. So if I want to use this non-disclosure agreement template, I can select Use on the right-hand side. This is going to bring me to the template quick send screen. And this is where I'll be able to plug in the information for my client in this case, as well as the legal department. You'll notice that some of the elements on this template, like the messaging, for example, are locked down. So I'm not even able to make an edit here to the messaging. As the template owner, there are ways that you can protect your template from unwanted edits or changes, and this is an example of that. And we'll talk more about that later. But for now, let's plug in the information for our client. I'll go ahead and send this to Connie Client. And for the legal department, I'll send it to Larry Legal. Now I can click send at the bottom and my document and the fields, all of that will already be intact because I am using a template. If I were to click advanced edit at the bottom, this is the opportunity for me to make a one-off change to the envelope using the template that's already been applied. However, any changes that I make using the advanced edit will only impact this particular envelope and not the whole template. For now, I'll just click send. Now you can see if I go to my Manage tab in my account and my Sent folder where I can see my sent envelopes, I should have that envelope right on top. It says, please DocuSign Mutual Non-Disclosure Agreement, Connie Client. You can see that the subject line of the envelope is automatically pulling in our client's information. So that's actually a feature of templates to have that customized subject line. Now, what does it look like from the perspective of Connie and Larry? Let's take a look at the signing process. Pulling up my email account that I used for Connie, she'll see that she'll get an email here with that same subject line. She'll click in, she'll see it's coming from me. She'll be able to click Review Document to open up the signing process. She can go ahead and agree to our legal disclosure here at the top. And then she'll scroll through and read all of these terms in the non-disclosure. And then at the bottom, she'll be able to sign. Once we click finish, then it's going to be routed to Larry Legal, who is our second recipient. So all of that was put into place because we were using a template. So I know we haven't actually gone through, all of the steps to create a template, but hopefully you can sort of see at a high level how using templates will decrease that time it takes to send. So now let's go in and talk about creating a template. And we're going to start with creating a static template. Our example for this first use case is a course withdrawal form. So let's say that we have a standard course withdrawal form. We can see a picture of it here. And a student needs to fill this out whenever they would like to withdraw from a course. So the student is going to be filling out all of this information. Then we would like it to be routed to their academic advisor for them to approve or deny the changes and also sign. And then ultimately, we would like it to be routed to the registrar so that they can give their stamp of approval on the course withdrawal process as well. So we'll have 3 different recipients on this template. So how do we create a template? Well, from that templates tab where we were earlier in the application, we'll see there's a new button on the left-hand side. And there are going to be 3 different options here from the list. The first is to create a template. This is going to allow you to create a new template from scratch, which is what we'll be doing here in a moment. There's also an upload template option. This is helpful if you already have a file on hand that you want to upload. And typically we see clients use this option when they download a template from another account, for example, their demo account, and then upload that downloaded file into their production account as a new template. So the upload option is, again, usually used in situations where you're moving templates from one account to another through the download and then upload action. It can save you a lot of time as opposed to recreating all of your templates from scratch. There's also Create Power Form. So we'll talk more about Power Forms in our Power Forms 101 session. But a Power Form is basically a link that is used. You can post that link externally. And what happens is your recipients will be able to click on that link and initiate the process of creating an envelope. So it's technically a way for you to collect responses and collect data from people that you do not know ahead of time. So you don't need to send them an invitation from DocuSign like we've been seeing thus far. Really cool feature that we'll definitely dive into in just a little bit in the next session. So we've clicked Create Template. We're going to go ahead and move into our recipients. So when you are adding recipients to your template, there are technically two different types of recipients that you can add. There's a placeholder recipient and a named recipient. A placeholder recipient is used in a situation where you have a recipient that's going to be different each time you use the template. For example, with our course withdrawal form, we have our student and our academic advisor. Now, those are going to be different depending on who we're sending to. So we're just going to write student and academic advisor in the role here and leave name and email address blank. So instead of us actually building in a random name and email address into the template, we can just leave it blank. And that way, when we use the template, we'll be prompted to fill it in. That's a placeholder. Now, alternatively, you may have situations where you have a recipient that will always be the same whenever the template is used. For example, with the course withdrawal form, we have our registrar's office. It's always going to be the same email address and name for the registrar. Maybe it's just registrar@abcuniversity.edu, for example. We could actually plug in that information into the template as a named recipient, and that will cut down on the amount of time that it takes for us to send the envelope because that information will already populate for us. So your template can have a combination of placeholder as well as named recipients. So let's go ahead and jump in. We'll start to create our template for the course withdrawal form. Pulling back up my account here, we'll go to the templates page at the top. And to create a new template, I'll select the new button and create template. Now, when you're naming your templates, that's the first thing we need to do here is give it a name. When you're naming your templates, we always recommend using descriptive naming conventions. That way, you're not just titling your templates, template 1 versus template 2. You're not going to know what that means as you start to build out 30 plus templates, right? Additionally, if you plan on sharing your templates with other people on your account, they may not know what template 1 versus template 2 is. So I'm going to go ahead and call this ABC University. That's our fictitious school course withdrawal form. There is also the opportunity to give your template a description if you need to. The next thing we'll need to do is add in our documents. So just like when we're sending a regular envelope, we can upload right from our computer, or we can pull a document from any of those cloud storage providers. I'll go ahead and click upload, and I will look for that course withdrawal form file, So here we go. I'll go ahead and click open. And just so you can see what this document looks like, if I hover over it and click view, you can see it's pretty standard. The student will need to fill out some personal information about themselves, tell us what term they are withdrawing a course from, of course, tell us what courses they are withdrawing from, why. They'll need to sign. Scrolling down, our academic advisor will need to either endorse or not endorse the change. And then ultimately, our registrar will need to sign. So that's our document. Next, we'll need to add in our recipients. So we do need to have a routing order here in our template. So I'm going to check off set signing order. And I'm going to make sure that the student is the first recipient, then it goes to the advisor, and then ultimately to the registrar. So for recipient number 1, I'm going to make the role student. I'm not going to plug in a name or an email address, again, because this is a placeholder. We can see that right now our student has the needs to sign action, meaning that they need to fill out at least one of the fields. However, we do have those other recipient actions available depending on how you would like someone to interact with the envelope. Now, as a throwback to last class, remember that we can actually build authentication into our template. And there are those 3 different kinds of authentication available. We have the ability to add access codes, as well as those advanced identity verification methods. So phone call, SMS, or knowledge-based. So if I wanted to add an access code for the student, I could select add access code. And then here, I actually have the ability to require an access code for this recipient. So that way, when I go to use this template, maybe next week, and I'm sending it to a student, I have to give them an access code. And again, those are helpful as an additional layer of security to make sure that the right people are accessing your envelopes. So I'm going to require an access code for the student whenever the template is used. I'll click add recipient, and next I'll have my academic advisor. So I'll say academic advisor. I'm going to leave name and email address blank, and then I'm going to leave them with needs to sign as their action. I'll click add recipient one more time, and this is where I'll have my registrar. This is going to be a named recipient though. I have a name and email that will always be used for the registrar. So I'm going to build that into my template. Now, if we have a named recipient on our template and we want to protect that named recipient from being edited by anyone that's using our template, if we plan to share it, we can click this customize drop down here and then select advanced settings below all of the authentication options. If I click advanced settings, this is where I can set it up so that senders are not able to edit the recipient, nor are they able to delete this recipient from the order. So again, this is helpful if you plan on sharing your template with others on your account and you want to protect a named recipient on your template from being either deleted from the workflow entirely or modified. So we'll see how that looks when we go to use our template in just a little bit. Scrolling down, we'll have the ability to customize the messaging for the template. So the email subject line and the email message. Now, of course, we have a subject line already populating for us, but we can click in here and customize it. So maybe I'll say ABC University course withdrawal request for, and then I want to insert the student's name. Remember, the merge field is an option with templates like we saw in our NDA example. We saw that Connie client's name got inserted into the subject line automatically. To add a merge field, we can click on this little square with the arrow, and you can choose either name or email address from any of your recipients. So maybe I'll insert student's name. So now every time I send this out, regardless of what the student's name is, the subject line is going to be unique. And that's helpful for you on the back end because it'll help you identify which envelope is which, as opposed to them all having the same subject line. It'll also help if you're trying to search for a particular envelope because the name's already in the subject line. And it'll even be more personable for your recipient when they're getting that email. They'll know that it's for them. And you can also enter in a generic message as well. So maybe I want to provide some instructions for the student. I'll go ahead and copy. I have them on another page. I'll go ahead and copy those instructions and paste them here. So just to show you, it says, before you click begin signing, make sure you have the following information available. And then I've listed out all of the information that I want them to have as they're filling out the form. Again, this isn't required, but a nice helpful place to provide those instructions if needed. Now, if you need to customize the messaging even further than what I've shown, so maybe you need to add these merge fields into the actual body of your email as well, that's something that your professional services team can help you with. So again, if you're looking at the messaging and you're maybe wondering what else is possible or if something specific is possible, I encourage you to jot that down and bring that to one of those working sessions because Carrie and Jesse will be able to further elaborate on how your messaging can be customized. Hans, I see your question. Can you add images into the email message? So not out of the box through what I'm showing, but again, that could be something that could perhaps be done with advanced coding that's beyond my scope. So I'd jot that question down and bring it to a working session. So before I get to the fields, I want to mention there are some advanced options that we can customize for our template. So all the way in the upper corner, you'll see advanced options. If I click on that, here we'll see a lot of the same advanced options that we saw in our first session, DocuSign 101. So I have the ability to allow my recipients to print and sign on paper. Do I want recipients to change signing responsibility or have that ability to change signing responsibility? Again, I can turn these off from my template. Same thing with our reminder policies. If we would like to send automated reminders to our recipients or have an expiration policy, again, I could configure those settings for this template accordingly. But what I really want to talk about are some template specific settings. So first, there is the option to add a password onto your template. And this will really come into play when you start to think about sharing your template. So if you add a password, then no one will be able to make edits to your template unless they have the password that you will share with them if you want them to know it. So if you plan on sharing your template, if you have a password, that's going to protect it from unwanted changes. And then of course, it would be up to you to share the password with those that you would like. There's also the ability to lock down certain aspects of your template from being modified. Again, this is especially relevant if you plan on sharing your template with others. First, you can allow or don't allow people to make edits to any of your recipients, add new recipients to the template, or remove recipients. So this would lock down all of the recipients on the template, as opposed to what we did with the registrar over here. We locked down one specific recipient. This would lock down all of them. We could also lock down the messaging. So if we do not want people to have the ability to edit the messaging on our template. If we had a brand assigned to our template, we could make sure that that brand was not edited by others. We'll talk more about branding in the Admin 101 session, but essentially it's a way to add your school's logo and colors to the signing process so that your recipients will have a more recognizable and familiar signing experience. I'll pause. I see a question. If we set up a template/form in the Development Sandbox account, will we be able to export it to our regular account once DocuSign goes live? Absolutely. So remember that option that I briefly mentioned for uploading a template? A lot of times clients will use that to move templates between demo and production so that they're not having to recreate the wheel in their production account. They can get all of their testing out of the way in demo. So we'll talk a little bit more about that process in our last section for managing. The last thing that I'll mention here in the settings is template usage. So as the template owner, you can determine how people can use the template. Can they do quick send, which remember is that pop-up screen we saw with the NDA example where I just plugged in Larry and Connie's information and clicked send? Or do they have the option to also use advanced edit, which was another option that we briefly saw with that NDA example. If you click advanced edit, you're able to make one-off changes on the envelope, not to the template. So again, just depending on how you would like people to work with your template, you can choose either of these options. And then there are little tool tips here as well that elaborate on, what is quick send versus what is advanced edit. We'll see these options in action a little bit more as well when we get to using a template shortly. I'm not going to change any of these settings, so I'll just click cancel. Now I'll go ahead and at the top where it says actions, I'm going to click save and close. I'm not going to add my fields just yet. Now we can see on the templates page, I have my ABC University course withdrawal form template ready to go. So let's go ahead and talk about adding fields, and then we'll come back and we'll actually add fields to our template. But before I do that, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions. We've already gotten a few questions in the chat, which is great, but I want to pause and see if anyone needs to unmute and ask a question out loud. That's fine as well. And again, forgive my awkward long pause. I just like to give an opportunity if someone's typing or struggling to come off mute for them to do so. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, someone says, what does include/exclude from matching? I'm going to actually put that question in the parking lot, so to speak, because we will be talking about matching for templates in another section in the training. So hold on that for just a minute. All right, so let's talk about adding fields. So once you plug in all of those recipient settings for your template and you add in your document, you'll click next, and then you'll be able to add fields. So this page should look pretty familiar to us just from our experience with sending envelopes from the previous session. But just as a refresher, remember, if you have multiple recipients who need to sign on your template or your document, you can change which recipient you're assigning fields to using the recipient menu in the upper left-hand corner. So in our case, we'll be able to toggle between the hiring manager, the candidate, and also the registrar. Any recipients that are set to just receive a copy, we won't be able to add fields for them, right? It's just those that actually need to sign. In terms of the fields that we can add, we'll see our standard fields palette here on the left going down vertically. These are all of the standard fields that will come with your DocuSign account. On the right-hand side, we have the page guide. So if your document has multiple pages, or if your template includes multiple documents, you can easily toggle between the different pages or between the documents if you need to maybe adjust the perspective or rotate the page, or even if you need to delete a page entirely, you can do that from the page guide. In the top center, there are some tools to help you work a little bit more effectively. You can undo and redo, which is extremely helpful in my opinion. There's also copy and paste. If you're doing a lot of repeat fields, this can be helpful. And then there's a zoom control as well to get more or less perspective. So I know we already went through some of these standard fields in DocuSign 101, but just to do a recap of the standard fields that you have available to you, we have the sign and initial fields. So sign is the signature field, which collects signature. Initial will collect someone's initials. Date signed will automatically capture the date of the signature. It'll just populate today's date. There's the recipient information fields, so we can capture recipient name, recipient email address. That will actually be read-only based off of what you enter when you're plugging in the recipient's information prior to send. You can also capture recipient company and recipient job title. And that information will be stored in their recipient contact record in your address book. So if you send to that recipient again in the future, and you're also collecting company, for example, that will pre-populate during the signing process for them. There are some action fields. So we have the text field, which is a really popular field because it can be used in so many different use cases. It's just an empty text box, right? So when you're using a text field, you can add a lot of different properties or settings to it, which we'll talk about in just a minute. For example, if you want to have a character limit for how much text can be typed in, maybe you want to control the font styling for the text that's typed in, or even force a specific format for the text that's typed in, like a date or a zip code. There's a checkbox field, which is helpful if you have a lot of options and you want your recipient to be able to choose at least one or one, but no more than three, for example. So a select all that apply type of question. There's a drop-down field, which is helpful if you have a lot of options and you want the recipient to choose one from the list. Radio button, which will give your recipient the ability to choose one option from a group. We'll see all three of these options in action on our template today. Actually, we won't see drop-down, but I will talk a little bit more about when you might use drop-down in just a bit. And then some additional fields. So we have a formula field. This is helpful. It will allow you to calculate a value on your document using information that was previously entered. There's an attachment field, which would give your recipient the ability to add a document to the signing process. For example, maybe you're sending out an offer letter and you would like your candidate to, if they are signing and accepting the offer, to add a copy of their driver's license to the offer letter so that you can get started processing their employee profile, for example. So we'll see a lot of these field types in action today during our demonstration. But if you're curious about maybe a field type that we're not going to end up using, feel free to play around during, in your demo account after today's class when you're starting to practice. So I mentioned that you can adjust a field's settings or properties. So each field that you add will have different properties available based off of its field type. In this screenshot, we're looking at a text field, which I mentioned is one of our more robust field types. There are a lot of different properties or settings available for a text field because it is so open. So let's take a look at some of them. So the first thing we'll see here is the ability to actually change who the field is assigned to. Right now, we can see the field is assigned to Henry, but maybe we wanted to change it to a different recipient. We could use the drop-down menu. I can see that the field is required, meaning that the recipient has to fill it out. If maybe instead it should be marked as optional, I could just uncheck. There's the option to adjust the formatting for the field. So if I wanted to change how the text looks once it's typed in, I can add a tooltip to the field. This is helpful for guidance for your recipients if they're maybe not sure what they should be entering in to this text field. But perhaps more importantly, this is also what will be read by a screen reader if you have, a recipient who needs one for accessibility reasons. You can add validation to a text field. So, I mentioned that if you need your recipients to type text in a specific format, you can choose from any of our validation options. So you could require, an email address format, a social security number format, a zip code format, so on and so forth. And there's even the option to create your own custom formats if you have something specific. Lastly, I'll mention that there is a collaboration option. So if you have a situation where you would like recipients to work together on what's included in a field, you can mark it as collaborative. With collaborative fields, all recipients will be able to make changes. It's not just going to apply to specific individuals, it's everyone. And you can make it so that you require initials on any changes that are made by all recipients. So that way everyone is acknowledging if a change was made and saying that they accept that change. So this may not be useful for all of your use cases, but if you do need people to work together on a value, you could certainly mark a field as collaborative. So in addition to the standard fields that come with your DocuSign account, you can also create custom fields. Now, custom fields are just manipulated or customized versions of standard fields. Now, creating a custom field will be helpful so that you won't have to go through all of those property customizations every time you want to use that field. For example, US state. Let's say that maybe in some of your admission paperwork that you send out to students, you want them to tell you what their home state is. Now, instead of you creating a drop-down field and plugging in all 50 states plus territories every single time, you might create a custom field, maybe a drop-down list with all of the states listed. So that way the student can just pick their state and you won't have to spend extra time loading that list in every time you need it. So here you can see a screenshot. We have the field called US states. It's a drop-down list. And we've added all of the states separated by a semicolon. We can then also mark this as a shared field so that it could be seen by all users on the account. So if you're an administrator, you have the ability to share the custom field with everyone so that they can use it on their envelopes and their templates. So Carrie's gone ahead and plugged in all of the abbreviations for the states, so you can feel free to copy that and paste it onto another document so that you can have that ready when you go to make a field if this is something that you'll need. I also briefly just want to talk a little bit more about formula fields. We are going to use a formula field in our example today. But as I said, formula fields will basically allow you to create a calculation on your document using data from other fields. So we're going to use the formula field for credit hours today in our example. So students might be able to withdraw from multiple courses, and we want to calculate the total number of credit hours that they're withdrawing from based off of the courses that they've entered. So we could create a formula that adds up credit hours 1, credit hours 2, so on and so forth for as many courses as we're allowing them to withdraw from. And then of course, DocuSign will calculate the result. So this is pretty cool. It might sound a little bit abstract right now, but we will see it in action. So let's go ahead and jump back into DocuSign. I will go ahead and keep working on my template and we'll add in some fields. So here in the templates page, I see my template that we were working on. I'll go ahead and click on the template and then select edit in the middle here. This will just bring me back to the template creation screen. Now I can click next in the upper corner to get to the page where I added my fields. Now remember, we have that zoom control at the top. So right now I'm set to fit to width. But if I want to zoom out a little bit to get more perspective, I can. So looking at our document, we'll start to add some fields. So using our recipient menu in the upper left, I can pick which recipient I want to add fields for. So let's start with the student because they have the most fields. The first thing we want is the date of our request. So for this, I'm going to use the date signed field. This will automatically populate the current date. Then I want the student's name. So I'll use the recipient name field and drag and drop. I want student email. So I'll use recipient email. And then I want student ID. So for this, I'm actually going to use a text box to allow the student to type in their ID number. So I'll drag the text box and drop it onto the page. Now, in terms of alignment, do you see where it says text here in the gray? That's where the text is actually going to be inputted. So you want to make sure that where it says text is aligning with other components on the page, as opposed to me putting it up here. The ID number will actually now be floating above where it says student ID. And you can play around with this. So let's click on this text field. After we click on the field, you'll notice all of the properties come out on the right. So we can first maybe change the assignment. Right now it's with the student, that's why it's yellow. But if I change this to the academic advisor, you can now see it's assigned to them and it's blue. I'll switch it back. It's a required field. If I want it to be optional, I can deselect and now it has no color at all. I'll keep it as required. Scrolling down, I could set up a character limit here. Right now it's set to 4,000. If I open the formatting property, this is where I could determine the font styling that will be inputted for the font. This is also something that can be controlled for the account by default in admin. So instead of you having to do this every time for every template that you make or every field that you add, you could set a default font styling in admin. For example, maybe your school always uses Helvetica for all of your fonts. You could select that. This is also where I could select fixed width. So I can actually stretch the field however far I want just by dragging and dropping. And if I set fixed width, that means that the recipient will only be able to have this space to type. Once they hit the end of this space, they will not be able to type anything else. So it's sort of an alternative to setting a character limit, if you will. You can hide text with asterisks. So this is really helpful if you have multiple recipients and the information that's going to be entered here could be sensitive. For example, what if this said social security number? You can mark this as hide text with asterisks. That way, when the student types in their social security number, it'll automatically be hidden for all of the other recipients who go to sign. They'll only see asterisks. They won't actually see the social security number. Now, you as the owner of the envelope or the sender of the envelope will, of course, be able to see that full social security number when you view the data on the back end, but it will be hidden for everyone else during the signing process. We can customize the data label. So every time you add a field into a document or onto a template, a data label is going to get assigned. By default, DocuSign creates a data label for you, and it just says text and then a long string of letters and numbers. Now, customizing these data labels is a good practice to get into just from the start, because the data label will actually be what's included if you ever go to export your form data. It'll also be used for more advanced functionality that we'll talk about in later sessions. For example, bulk sending, if you're sending to many recipients at once, or even power forms. It's also in this class, you'll see what will be used when we're creating our formulas. So again, as a best practice, whenever you're making a template, I would just come right in and customize the data label to say whatever you want it to say so that it's reflective of the value. In this case, student ID. You can always customize your data labels after you set up your template, but again, it's one of those things to just get in the swing of doing just from the jump, so that way everything's set up and ready to go off the bat. There's the tooltip field. Again, this is helpful for suggested guidance, but will also be what is read out loud by the screen reader if your recipient is using one. So I might say, enter your 9-digit student ID number. Oops. And then if I wanted to, I could even set a character limit here to 9. So they're only able to enter in 9 characters if that's how long your student ID numbers are. There's validation. So right now there's no validation on this field, meaning that someone could type, letters or symbols. They don't have to type a number. But we have a number of different validation formats that you can select from. For example, numbers or date or social security number. So in this case, maybe I want to validate this with numbers. Now you'll notice there's also a custom option, so you can create your own custom validation methods. And if that's something that you're interested in, I would recommend jotting that down. And that's a great thing to bring to one of those working sessions with Carrie and Jesse. Today, we'll keep it simple and I'll just validate with numbers. Here's that collaboration option. So if I wanted to allow recipients to collaborate and work together on this field, I could. And then ultimately there is actually before I get to custom field, I want to mention sender permissions. So because we're creating a template, we do have the ability to lock down this field or prevent it from being removed. Again, this is especially relevant if we plan on sharing this template with other people. So if we mark it as mandatory under sender permissions, that means that it cannot be removed from the document. People will have to use this when they're using this template. Restrict changes would actually lock down all of the properties as well from being edited. Lastly, I want to mention save as custom field. So maybe we're going to use student ID a lot for some of our templates that we're setting up in our account. Instead of recreating it again, I could just select save as custom field. I could give it a name, student ID number, for example. And then you'll see as I scroll through, all of the properties that I set up are here. For example, the validation, the tooltip, and if I click save, now from my fields palette, you'll notice there's a section for custom fields with this little wrench icon, and you'll see student ID number is a field, and now I can easily just drag and drop it onto any templates that I want to use it on in the future. So that's all the properties. Let's continue adding our fields. So next, I would like the year to show up. And I want the year to be entered by the person who is sending off the envelope. I don't want the student to enter the year. I want it to be pre-populated. So we actually have some pre-fill tools that you can use over here by clicking the pencil on the side. These pre-fill tools will allow the sender to pre-populate information on the document. And that's perfect for this. So I'm going to use a text field and I'll drag it next to year. And again, there are some properties that you can adjust, but again, the purpose of these pre-fill fields is for the sender to pre-populate information before the envelope is sent. Next, I would like my student to select what term they are withdrawing from. So for this, I'm going to use a radio button field. They can pick one term. So I'll drag the radio button field onto the page and drop the first bullet in between these little brackets that are on my document. Then I'll start to click the plus icon to add 4 bullets. And now I'll drag and drop them using my mouse. So now that I've added each option, let's take a look at the properties. So with radio buttons specifically, there is a group label. So this is sort of like the data label, but for the group of radio buttons. So you can see there's a label already plugged in here by default, and I could customize this. Maybe I want the group label to be term. Then I can customize the individual values. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to make 1 fall, and you can see it's highlighted when I click into the section. So 2, and now spring is highlighted. So I'll make this spring, summer, and winter. I can even add a group tooltip as well. So maybe I want to select the, why is the T not working? There you go. Select the term you are withdrawing from. I can spell. There we go. So now we'll move into the courses. So next we would like our student to tell us what course they're withdrawing from, what the course number is, the description of the course, and the credit hours for the course. So for this, we're going to use all text fields. So I'll drag the first text field into the box. Again, wherever it says text, that's where your text is going to be inputted. So right now it'll be in the middle of this row, but if you wanted it to be right on the line, you would drag it down a little bit. I'll just have it in the middle. I'll go ahead and expand this text field all the way over. And then in the properties, I'm going to mark this as fixed width. So they only have that amount of space to type. I'll add another text field for course number, and I'll shrink it down to the space. I'll set this as fixed width. And from validation, I'm going to validate this with numbers. They can only type a number in for course number. Makes sense. I'll do another text field for course description. I'll drag it out and I'll mark it as fixed width, and a final text box for credit hours. And I'll shrink it down, fixed width, and this time I'll validate with numbers as well. So that was easy, but now I got to do that, however many more times for as many rows as I have. Now, as a shortcut, remember we have copy and paste. So if I wanted to copy all of these, I could click down with my mouse and drag a lasso around all of those text boxes and then release. So that way they're all selected. Now I can either use my keyboard commands or copy paste at the top. So I'll select copy, click into the document, and then paste. I'll do that however many more times as I need. And now I can drag these to the right spot. So again, really helpful time-saving tool there. So I'll do this. And if they ever get unselected, remember you can just drag a lasso around all of them to get them grouped so that you can move them all at the same time. So I'll keep doing that for my last two boxes. One more. And voila. So a lot faster than, doing that same thing over and over again. Now I want to make the other text fields besides the first row optional because someone doesn't have to withdraw from 6 courses at once. They may only need to withdraw from 1. So to make the remaining rows optional, I'll drag the lasso around all of the rows besides the first and then deselect. And then over in the properties, I can uncheck required. So now all of those are optional. So now before we set up our total number of credit hours, I want to take a look at our data labels. So I didn't customize any of those data labels, and I'm not going to do all of them. That would take a little bit. I'm only going to do a couple just for the demonstration. So let me click into this first credit hours box. And scrolling down to the data label section in the properties, I'm going to make this credit hours 1. I'll click into the second credit hours box and I'll customize this data label to be credit hours 2. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to demonstrate the formula field. Remember, the formula field will allow you to calculate a value on the document. And I want it to calculate total number of credit hours. So I'll take the formula field from the side and I'll drag it over to total number of credit hours. And then once I add the formula field over in the properties, I can click set up under edit formula. Here, I can actually type out the terms of my formula. And what do you know? If I click into the box to start typing, it's going to populate all of my fields. And it's showing me the data labels. So you can see here, I already have a couple that are customized, but I have a bunch that I have not customized. So again, as a best practice, putting in that work to customize the data labels up front will be helpful. I see a question. If there is a fixed height, will we be able to see a formatting size restriction, or will it cut off the part that does not fit within the height? So if you have a fixed width, that's only for how long, like the width of the box, it won't expand as they keep typing. In terms of the height of the text, that's purely going to be determined based off of the sizing. If I just exit off of the sizing that's done here in the formatting. So right now, all of my font will be entered into the system as size 9 when someone types text, but if you want it to be larger, of course, you can expand. But again, fixed width is mostly referring to the width of the text box and will that expand as someone keeps typing? Or if they reach the end of the box with their text, will it just not allow them to enter in any more text, which is what we've said. Hopefully that helps a little bit. But coming back to the formula, let me click setup again and let's set it up. So I want to do credit hours 1. So I'll select that and now I can choose an operator. So I'll select add in this case, credit hours 2. And then I can continue to do this for the other boxes, but I didn't add data labels. So I'm just going to do credit hours 1 plus credit hours 2 to keep it simple. And now I'll click save. And I can always edit that formula at any time over here. Scrolling down, next, we would like our student to tell us why they are requesting leave. Now, they may be requesting leave for multiple reasons. So for this, I'm going to use the checkbox field, which will allow them to select more than one. I'll drag the checkbox field onto the page in between the brackets, and then continue adding choices for as many checkboxes as I have. And then I'll simply just drag them to the right spot. So drag. And once I've added in all of my checkboxes over in the properties, if I come to validation specifically, this is where I could determine the behavior. So maybe I want them to select at least one reason for why they are requesting to withdraw from the course. Or maybe I want them to select a range. They have to select one, but they can't choose more than 3, for example. I'll just do select at least one to keep it simple. Next, I want to add a text field here, and maybe I'll make this bigger. I'll make it a comment box by dragging and dropping, and I'll mark it as optional. They might not have any comments, but I want to give them the opportunity to type the comments, of course, if they have them. Lastly, I want my student to sign, so I'll drag the signature field and the date field. Now remember, you can easily align your fields, and we talked about this in DocuSign 101. But if you drag a lasso around your fields and then deselect so that they're selected, there are those alignment tools on the right. So in this case, I would align horizontally to the bottom. Next, I need my advisor to either endorse or not endorse the change. So I'm going to add a radio button for with endorsement, and then another button for without endorsement. But you'll notice I accidentally added those radio buttons for the student. That's why they're yellow. Remember, you can easily change a field assignment in the properties. So I'll switch this to academic advisor for both of those buttons. And now they're blue. Hans says, can you use radio button instead of checkbox? Yeah, definitely. If you, in this case, only want them to select one option, you could use radio button. I used a checkbox because they might have more than one reason for why they're requesting leave. And I set it up so that they have to select at least one, but I didn't put a cap on it. So maybe they're requesting leave for all of these reasons. They could select all of them. Again, purely determining on what kind of behavior you want, that will dictate whether you're using a checkbox or a radio button. Coming back to the academic advisor, I'm going to click into my radio buttons and customize the labels. So I'll say academic advisor endorsement. My keyboard is being really slow today for some reason. Cool. Make sure that's spelled right. And then radio button 1 will be yes, and radio button 2 will be no. I'll go ahead and add a text field for my advisor for comments. And I'll make that optional. They might not have any comments. And then I'll add the signature field for the advisor. Maybe put that here. The name of the advisor and the date that the advisor has signed. Lastly, at the bottom, I need my registrar to sign. So I'm going to switch the recipient now to registrar. The fields are purple. I would like my registrar to initial. I want the date of that initial to be captured. And I would like them an opportunity to provide comments optionally. So with that, I've customized all of the fields. Now, before I click Save and Close at the top, you can always see a preview of what your template looks like by clicking Recipient Preview. This is going to show you what your template would look like from the perspective of any of your recipients. So let's see what it would look like from the student's perspective, since they have the most fields. So they'll go into Sign, they'll see all of that information. You can see if I hover over student ID, there's that tooltip for the student ID number. They hover over each of the buttons here for term. We have that tooltip as well as the label coming into play. They can enter their information for their course. Maybe I want to shift the size of those text fields to make them a little bit smaller. Looks like they're kind of coming off the page there. This recipient preview will help you if you potentially see any errors in your configuration. So now I can click the X to exit that preview. And again, maybe I want to move my text fields up a little bit to make them more aligned. I'm not going to worry too much about that today, just for timing's sake. So now I'll just click Save and Close. And I have my template ready. So let's see the fruit of all of our labor. Let's go ahead and send out this template to a student who is requesting leave. So to do that, or I'm saying leave, who is requesting to withdraw from a course. So I can use the template by coming to the Use option over here. And this is going to bring me to the place where I can plug in my student's information as well as my advisor's information. So let's start with the student. Let's say that we're sending this to Sally's student. She's going to be withdrawing from a course. I'll plug in her name and her email. You'll see that I am required to have an access code for Sally because we built that functionality into our template. So I can create a code of my own choosing, or I can auto-generate a code using that function. So I'll just do that today. Then I need to plug in the information for my advisor. So maybe Sally's advisor is Allie. So I'll plug in Allie's information. And then for our registrar, notice they are completely locked down. I'm not able to remove the registrar or to edit their information. That's because, again, from that customize option in my template, I set it up so that people cannot edit this recipient, nor can they remove it from the signing order. Taking a look at our messaging, that's all ready to go. The subject line and the email message. If I click next, all of my lovely fields are here. And then before I click send, I can click on that year field that we set up for the sender to fill in. And then in the properties, I can type in the year, so 2021. I'm pre-filling that for my recipients as the sender. Now I'll click send, and that's going to send off the course withdrawal form to that student, Sally. So that drastically cut down on the amount of time versus me sitting there adding all of those fields each and every time a student needs to withdraw from a course. So what does that look like from the perspective of Sally? If I pull up my email, here we can see Sally has an email. She'll see all of that information about the contents that she should have ready to go before she clicks begin signing. She'll go ahead and click sign, and then she has to authenticate because we required that access code. So she'll go ahead and validate with her code, and now she'll be able to enter into the signing process. She'll agree to our legal disclosure and then fill out the information accordingly. She'll enter her student ID number. So I think we set this to 9 characters as a limit. So notice once I get to the 9th character, I can't type anymore. Maybe she's withdrawing from a course in the fall. She'll enter the name of her course. Remember, I set these to fixed width. So if I keep typing, the width is not going to expand. So let's say Biology 101 is the course. The course number is 123456. The description is Introduction to Biology. And let's say that it's 2 credit hours. Her other course, let's say, is University 101, course number, blah, blah, blah. And then this might be Introduction to University Life. I had to take something like that when I went to college. And let's say that's 3 credit hours. Notice the 2 and the 3 are automatically being added together to show as 5. That's our formula field in action. Scrolling down, she'll choose a reason. So maybe she's withdrawing for academic reasons. And then she'll go ahead and sign. Once she clicks finish, then the next recipient in the workflow will be notified. That's the advisor. And then after the advisor signs, then the registrar will be notified. Any questions about our template before we move on to creating and applying a dynamic template? I'll pause. Feel free to unmute or send in the chat. Just taking a sip of my coffee. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on then. Of course, if you think of any questions, feel free to send them in at any point in time. But let's move on to our next example, which is applying a template. Now, why would you ever need to apply a template? Well, let's say that you have a situation where you need to customize a document outside of DocuSign first, whether that be to plug in certain specific information or to edit the structure of the document for whatever reason. You can save those changes to your device once you've customized the document, and then upload that customized document into an envelope in DocuSign. Then you can apply a template in order to preserve the workflow for your recipients, preserve the messaging for the email notification, and all of those fields. Those components will then be applied on top of that customized version of the document. So as an example, let's think about an offer letter. Offer letters are going to be different, as I said, for each candidate, right? We'll need to plug in the candidate's name, what their job title is, what their salary is, so on and so forth. So when we're building a template, we could use a placeholder document that has a lot of those components blank. Then when we're going to send a specific offer, we could plug in the details of the offer in a document outside of DocuSign, load that customized offer letter document into an envelope, and apply our offer letter template. So that way our customized document will be added in place of this placeholder document, but the structure and the workflow of the template remains intact. So I think this will make a little bit more sense once you see it in action. But again, it is helpful if you are customizing documents outside of DocuSign and you want to preserve the template's structure and workflow. So there are two different ways that you can apply a template. First, you can manually apply a template. Once you upload a document into an envelope, using the little ellipses icon that you see here in the screenshot, you can select Apply Template and then choose which template you want to apply. Alternatively, DocuSign has an automated function called template matching. In this case, when you upload a document to an envelope, DocuSign will automatically do a scan to see if there are any templates in your system that are a match. If there are matches, DocuSign will showcase those matches here, and you can select from any of those matches and apply. Now, by default, the matching criteria is 80%, meaning that 80% of your document and a template in the system need to match in order for it to be suggested, but that sensitivity level can be adjusted. And this actually circles back to the question that I got earlier in the chat. I think it was from Teresa. What does include or exclude from matching mean? So I'll showcase how you can exclude or include a template from matching in a later section, but that's what that's referring to, is the template matching functionality. So how does template matching work? So first, you'll upload a document into an envelope. For example, let's say that we're sending an offer letter to Lily Barker. We've customized that offer letter outside of DocuSign to include Lily's name, her start date, her salary, etc. We'll upload that into DocuSign, and then DocuSign will do a scan to see if there are any templates that match that document. If there are, we can select which template we want to apply. And once we apply the template, the fields, the messaging, and the recipient workflow will all be applied to that customized version of the document, which will save us a lot of time. Once a template is suggested, there is the ability to click cancel, so you don't always have to go with what the system tells you is a match. It's just a helpful tool in case maybe you forgot that there was a template that was used for that specific type of document. So let's go in and we will create a dynamic template. Coming back to my account, I first want to start with where template matching is enabled, because I didn't actually demonstrate or show you on a screenshot where we turn that on. So template matching is actually a setting that is enabled for each user independently. So it's not an account setting. You can decide yourself if you want to use it or not. And you can do that from your preferences. So if you click on your profile icon in your account, the little circle with your headshot or your initials, and then you select preferences, you'll see here under signing and sending on the left, or the left, there's an option for template matching. And here you can say template matching is being used or not. If it is being used, what is the sensitivity level? And again, by default, that's 80%. So let's build out our new template for the offer letter. So I'll go to the templates tab again, and I'll click new, create template. This time I'm going to create an offer letter template. So I'll say ABC University offer letter. I'll go ahead and click upload, and I'll look for the offer letter document that I want to use. Now, just to show you this document, if I hover over it and click view, you'll see there are quite a few placeholders. So the name of the candidate, the title, the salary, the date when they're agreeing to start, all of that is being left out of the document. It will be actually plugged in a customized version of the document that we apply the template to when we are going to send out an offer. But inside of our template, we can simply store this placeholder document. Scrolling down, I'll set up my recipient structure. So let's say that I want this to go to the candidate, of course, then the hiring manager to sign, and then to HR to get a copy. So we'll have a signing order. The first role will be the candidate. I'll click add recipient. The next role will be the hiring manager. And the final role will be HR. And maybe I actually want to go ahead and make HR a named recipient. So I'll plug in their information. They're set to receive a copy. And then maybe I also want to lock them down, just like I did with the registrar on our course withdrawal template. I can click those same customized settings. Scrolling down, we'll edit our messaging. So our email subject line will say ABC University offer letter for, and then I'll insert maybe the candidate's name. I'll go ahead and click next. And here you can see I can add all of my fields. Now I'm not going to need to add fields here for the position title, the salary, and the start date. Remember, all of that will be added outside of DocuSign by whoever is creating the offer. So when I scroll down, all I need to do is just plug in the signature fields. So I have my candidate signature. I want their name and the date signed. And again, I can align all of those fields using that alignment trick. Then I would like my hiring manager to sign. So I'll add the same fields. And actually, it looks like I need my HR people to sign. I must have misunderstood, saying that they needed to only get a copy. No worries, I can always click the back button here in the upper left-hand corner to go back to the recipient page, and I'll make HR needs to sign instead of receives a copy. And now when I come back, I have my purple recipient for HR, and I can add the same fields. So really easy to fix things like that on your template. So now that I have all of my fields set up, I'll go ahead and click Save and Close. And what we can do now is we can actually add in a document that we have customized for a specific candidate, and we will apply that offer letter template. So let's demonstrate that. I'll go to my home page. And I'll go ahead and select Start, Send an Envelope, just like we learned in DocuSign 101. From here, I'll upload a document, and I'm going to add in a customized offer letter for Lily Barker. Now you'll notice right away, DocuSign is alerting me because I have template matching on. It's telling me, hey, you have a template called ABC University Offer Letter, and it is a 96% match to the document that you've uploaded. If I click apply, that will apply the template. Now I can click cancel. If I don't have template matching on, or maybe I didn't realize, or I realize later that there's a template, I can always click the ellipses and apply a template manually here. This would do the same thing. It would allow me to browse all of my templates. There's also a suggested column where I can see if there are any matches. Again, this one is a 96% match. I could select the template and apply. So both do the same thing. The template matching, I would say, might be more helpful in situations where you maybe don't realize that there is a template, because again, it will alert you. But here I have applied the template, and you'll notice things look a little bit different. Now, instead of just blank recipients, I'm being prompted to enter in my candidate information, my hiring manager information, and then HR is already there and locked down. So let's do it. I'll plug in Lily's information. Hiring manager, her name is Samantha Carter. Everything else is ready here, so I'll go ahead and click next. And now we can see that the information's plugged in with our different documents. So associate professor, $80,000 annually, and the start date of May 1st. If we scroll down, all of our fields are also added here as well onto the different version of the document. Now, if your document is going to be shifting in length or structure, there is a more advanced feature called autoplace that you can set up for your fields. So that way, as your document shifts in length, your fields will always be added to the right spot. What you can do with autoplace is actually associate a text string to the field, sort of anchoring that field to the text string of your choosing. We'll talk about that more in our advanced template sessions that will ultimately or may ultimately be scheduled for your school. But our document didn't shift too much in length, so all of our fields are in the right spot. Now up at the top, you'll see that the dear, I don't have the name on the document. I must have forgot that when I was customizing the document outside of DocuSign. So I could easily add the name of the candidate, in this case, Lily, by dragging that name field over. Or maybe I want to use that pre-fill fields option. I could just add a text box for the pre-fill field, and then I could write Dear Lily. Same thing with the date up here. Maybe I want to add the date of the offer. I could add a pre-fill field up top. And let's say that today's date is the 25th. So August 25th, 2021. Again, those pre-fill fields are helpful if you as the sender are filling in information prior to yourself sending out the document. And actually, we could have even done that in place of customizing the document outside of DocuSign. Maybe on our template, we just added a bunch of pre-fill fields here, here, and here for the person who's sending out the offer to plug in the details. Both methods would work. I'll click send. And now if I pull up my email account, we should see that Lily will have an email here for her offer. She'll go ahead and click review document. She'll agree to our legal disclosure. She'll see the date at the top, her name next to where it says dear, and then all of those components that were built into the document. So her salary, her manager's name, her title, and her start date. And then we'll, of course, go through that signing ceremony. So that's applying a template. Again, very helpful in situations where you need to customize a document before you send it out, but you still want to benefit from the pre-built structure of a template. Any questions before we move into some additional ways to create a template? All right. So the next thing I want to talk about are some additional ways that a template can be created. So you don't always need to do it from scratch. There's two different shortcuts that I'll show you today. The first is to save a previously sent envelope as a template. So this is really helpful if you put a lot of time and effort into sending out an envelope, but then later realize that that actually might be helpful to have as a template in the future. You can go to your Manage tab to see your previously sent envelope. And then from the Actions dropdown, you can select Save as Template. Then you'll see a lot of the components will populate for you in your template, and you can, of course, make modifications as needed. Alternatively, you can also copy a template. So maybe you're in charge of creating multiple templates that are similar. Instead of recreating the templates from scratch each time, you can duplicate and then make those minor tweaks or adjustments. So both really simple, but definitely help you to save time. Teresa says, can you allow the recipients to change the pre-fill fields? So there are some properties when you add a pre-fill field. I don't believe one of the options is to allow recipients to change them. That sort of defeats the purpose of the pre-fill field. Pre-fill fields are really meant for you as the sender to pre-populate information onto the document. You could, however, in that case, use a text field like we used in our course withdrawal form. There is the option to pre-populate text onto the text field, but that would still give the recipient the ability to make changes to that text. So I can demonstrate how to do that shortly, but you wouldn't use a pre-fill field for that. You would just use a text field. So let me showcase those methods. And actually, I'll just address Teresa's question first before we go in and take a look at those methods. So back in DocuSign, let's come back to the Templates tab. And if I click on the course withdrawal form template, I'll just click Edit to go back into the structure. And then on the Fields page, you'll see when I click on a text field, there's the option to add text here. So maybe I want this to say, enter student ID number. Let me just get rid of the character limit. So that's me pre-populating this information into the text field. Now, how would that look for the student? Remember, I can click recipient preview. And now when they're going to fill out their student ID number, they'll see that that text is already here, and then they can either keep it or make adjustments to it. In my case, they'll need to make an adjustment to it because it's not in a number format and I added validation for numbers only, but you get the point. When you use that option to add text, you can enter in text that will populate for them and they can update that. Now, if you didn't want them to update it, you could mark it as read only. What would that look like? Let me just remove the validation for the sake of demonstration. If I mark that as read only, now coming back to recipient preview, it looks kind of like a pre-fill field, right? It's there and the student cannot edit it. So a couple of different ways to achieve the same result, so to speak. Versus the pre-fill field that I entered, if I click on that, you'll notice that there's not really the opportunity to, allow what students can and cannot enter or what people can and cannot enter because they're not doing anything for this pre-fill field. That's me as the sender plugging in that information before I send it off. Does that help a little bit, Teresa? Awesome. Alrighty, so let's take a look at those shortcuts to create a template. So first, we can take a previously sent envelope and save it as a template. So if I come to my Manage tab and then I look at my Sent folder, here I can see that offer letter that I just sent to Lily Barker right on top. If I want to save this as a template for the future, I can come over to the Actions dropdown, and then one of the options is Save as Template. From here, I'll be taken back into that template creation screen. So I can see that a lot of my components have populated the title of my template. I can, of course, make an adjustment to remove Lily's name. My document is here. If I needed to replace this with a different document, I could click on the ellipses and replace. I could also see that my recipient structure is already here and set up. I would, of course, want to update my roles to be more reflective of my scenario. My messaging is partially set up, but would probably want to insert a merge field or two. And when I click next, you'll also notice that my fields are here as well. So saving as template is a great starting point. A lot of your components will come over. You'll just need to make minor adjustments to the structure so that it's named properly and stored in the system properly. So I'll go ahead and discard that. The other shortcut is to duplicate a template. So I already have the offer letter template here. If I want to copy this, I can easily come to the Actions dropdown and select Copy. I'll be taken back into that template creation screen, same as I was when I selected Save as Template. And again, I can make adjustments to the name of the template. I could replace the document with a different version if I needed to. I can update the recipient structure, the messaging, or the fields. But both copy and save as template are helpful shortcuts to have, again, if you're creating multiple templates that are similar. So I'll just get out of that page and let's go ahead and move into managing templates. So we have our template library. We're starting to build out templates. What actions can we take on those templates to manage them? So from the templates page, we'll see each of our templates on a line. And then from the actions dropdown, there will be several different actions that we can take. Now, I do want to note some of these actions may not be visible to you if you do not have full access to templates. And I'll be sure to point out what those are in just a little bit. First, you can make an edit to a template. So maybe you need to update the name, or maybe you need to replace the document if a more up-to-date version of the document is available. Or maybe you need to edit or remove different fields that are on the document. There's a download action. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but you have the ability to download a template from one account and then upload it into another. Here's how you would actually download the template to your local device. You can share a template with others on your account. We'll talk about template sharing more in just a little bit, but essentially it's a way for you to share access to a template with other users. You can transfer ownership of a template. So maybe you are the one who's in charge of creating the template, but once it's built out and tested, you want to transfer it to the manager on a respective team so that they can be the owner of the template moving forward. Or maybe you're leaving the organization or someone is leaving the organization and you want to take all of their templates and transfer them to another individual who's going to be taking on their workload. It's important to note the template owner is the only one who will have the ability to delete a template. So that's important as it relates to who the template owner is. That's their special permission, is that they can delete the template from the system. You can also create folders for your own organization over here on the left. So let's say you have a lot of different templates for different use cases or different departments. You can build out folders to organize them. I also want to talk through some best practices for folders or for template management. The first is to use those folders that I mentioned. So building out folders will help you be more organized, again, as you start to build out that template library. We also recommend, as I mentioned in the very beginning, to be explicit with your naming, especially if you're going to be doing any versioning in the system. So you can see here in the example, we have a current version of a non-disclosure and then an archived version. So if you are going to be creating different versions, be sure to indicate that in the title so people aren't using templates that are no longer in use. As it relates to the names of your templates, we recommend that you be consistent. So you can see here, one template is titled March 2019, and the other is titled 03/14/2019. So I know that's a minor thing, but it does help, especially if you have a lot of users who are all accessing the same templates. You don't want people to get confused, especially as you bring new people on board. So let's go in. I'll show you how you can organize your templates. We'll also demonstrate that download upload process that we talked about a little bit and how we can create some folders. So back in DocuSign here, you can see I'm on my templates page. From the left-hand side here, I can see some folders that are already set up for you. So you can see your templates. You can see templates that have been shared with you. We'll talk more about template sharing in a little bit. You can see favorites. So if we come back to my templates, you'll notice next to each template, there's a little star. If there's a template that you use all the time, you might consider favoriting it, and then you can easily see your favorites here. Now, next to each template, we have our actions dropdown. So if I look at my course withdrawal form template, you'll see I can edit. So if I click edit, I'll be taken back into the template structure to make any changes. For example, maybe we updated our course withdrawal form to include another signature. I can go ahead and replace this document with the new version of the form. I could also make adjustments to any of my recipient structure, my messaging, or my fields on the next page. And then, of course, save my changes. Also from the actions dropdown, we can include or exclude from matching. So now that we know about template matching, if we have a template that we want to be eligible for template matching or we want to be suggested, we can include it. And if we have a template that we don't want to be considered for template matching, we can exclude. And you can always see the current status underneath of each template. We can download the template. So if I download, this will download as a zip file on my computer. I'll just go ahead and save it to my desktop. And now let's pretend that I pulled up my production account. I can upload that downloaded file as a template by coming to the new button and selecting upload template. From here, I can select that zip file from my computer and click open. And now I have another course withdrawal form template in my account. So you can see how easy it was for me to download and then re-upload. You would be doing the same thing just from one account to another. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that duplicate from the system. The next thing I want to mention is ownership. So you can always transfer ownership of a template by using that actions dropdown and then selecting transfer ownership. Right now, I am the owner, but if I click transfer ownership, I can choose from any of the other users on my account, and then they would be the owner of that template moving forward. If I want to create folders for organization for my templates, on the left-hand side, I can click the plus icon where it says folders. And maybe I want to create a folder for offer letters templates. Maybe we're going to be building out different versions of the offer letter for our different types of employees. We have maybe associate professors, teaching assistants, so on and so forth. I'll click create, and now I have this folder. And I can easily just drag the templates into the folder, or from the actions dropdown, there is a move option, the second option here, and then I can dictate where I want it to go. So I'll move it to the offer letter template folder. And now it'll still appear here on the main My Templates page, but also when I click on the folder, now I see that template specifically. So we also have some shared folders here. So let's talk about template sharing now. So why would you want to share templates? Well, sharing templates is helpful if you have a lot of users on your account and you want to give those other users the ability to leverage the template's capabilities. It's important to note that admins on your account will have access to all templates, even if you don't share them with them. So admins will always be able to access all of the templates. So template sharing is mainly just used for non-admin users. So how can you share a template with users? Well, from that same actions dropdown where we've been working, you'll see there's a share with users option. You can click on that and then choose who you want to share with. Alternatively, You can also add a template to a shared folder and then share that folder with the users of your choosing. Both methods achieve the same result. However, a shared folder might be the preferred method if you're going to be sharing a lot of templates at once. That's because you can create the folder and then add as many templates as you want to the folder and then share that folder with the users of your choosing, versus clicking into each folder and then, or clicking into each template and then sharing individually. Who can you share templates with? Well, you can choose everyone on your account if needed. You can also, choose individual users by picking and choosing from their name. Or if you have a group of users on your account, you can also select a user group as well. And then anyone in that group will have access to the template. So we'll see this in action here. Let's go in and share templates. We'll do both the direct sharing as well as a folder. Back in DocuSign, if I go to the templates page, my templates, let's say that I want to share the offer letter template with someone on my account. From the drop-down menu next to the template, I can select Share with Users. From here, I can pick which users I want to share with. So maybe I want to share this with Anita and anyone that's in HR. So I can scroll through the list and find them. Now, instead of me relying on my memory to remember who is in HR and who isn't, that might be a great use case to have a group of users set up. User groups are configured in your admin settings, and typically schools will use this to designate users from different business units or departments, for example, admissions versus human resources. So if I had a group of all of my HR users, instead of picking and choosing them individually, I could just select that HR group, and then everyone in that group will have access to the template. Additionally, if I hire someone else in HR next week and I add them to the HR group, they'll automatically have access to that template. So it's helpful in the long run as well. We'll talk more about groups in our admin session. So for now, I'll just select Anita and Anne directly and click Share. So now when Anita and Anne log into DocuSign, they will see that template under Shared with Me on the left. Now, the other way that we can share templates is by creating a shared folder. So on the left for shared folders, I can click the plus icon and give it a name. So maybe I'll call this Human Resources Templates. I'll click Create. I'll drag that offer letter template into the folder, or I could have also used that move option, same thing. And now if I want to share this folder with users, I can click the ellipses and select Share. And then again, same screen, I could choose everybody, just individual people, or a group of users. So maybe this time I'll share it with let's say Hannah and Isaac. When I select Share, oops, let me do different people. I don't think those were active users. I'll just let's do Jessie. There we go. So now when Jessie, in this example, logs into DocuSign, she will see the Human Resources folder underneath Shared Folders, and she'll see whatever folder or whatever templates I add into the folder. So right now it's just this one, but maybe next week I create a new version of the offer letter and I can add that other template into the same folder for her to access. So both methods achieve the same result. Again, it purely just comes down to how many templates you're sharing and with how large of a group for which method you'll want to use. Remember, if you're going to be sharing your templates, you might want to think about protecting your templates from those unwanted changes. So just to remind you, if I click back into a template and click Edit, remember in the advanced options, you have the ability to password protect your template, prevent modifications to certain areas of your template, as well as determine how your template can be used. Quick send only, advanced edit only, or both. So again, those are some things to look through before you share out your template. But with that, that is all of the content that I wanted to cover. So we'll move into our summary slides here. First, I want to mention that we do have a feedback survey that we would love for you to fill out. You can give your feedback about the course, about myself as a facilitator, and your feedback really helps us to make this program better for other schools that are going through, and also for other trainings that I'm going to do with your school. So you'll get a feedback link in the follow-up email that Carrie sends after class. I want to just reiterate some of the resources that you have available to you. So we have DocuSign University. This is our learning management portal. You can come here to sign up for more training once we finish the training with your school. We have a variety of other free instructor-led courses that you can register for. They are public courses, most of them, so you'll be able to join with other clients even outside of your vertical, which can be interesting. We also have some self-paced training available as well if you prefer to learn at your own speed. There's the support site where you can search for articles and user guides, really helpful no matter what your skill level is. I still use the support site honestly every day, even though I'm a pretty experienced DocuSign user. It's nice to just get a refresher on a certain feature or even search for functionality that you're not sure about. This is also where you can come to open up a ticket with our support team if you need help. The knowledge market is a great place to go as you are just starting to think about how you can use DocuSign. You can explore best practices and different use cases. And we do have a lot of verticalized content here as well, so you can learn more about how others in the higher education space are leveraging DocuSign. And then lastly, there's a YouTube channel. We have a lot of tutorial videos uploaded here on different features. So you'll get all of these links in the slide deck after class. You'll also get some template specific links that we've gone ahead and curated here. These are going to be links based off of the subjects that we talked about today. So after class, if you want to read more, this is a great place to start. Also after class, you can maybe log into your demo sandbox account and begin trying to build out a template for a specific use case. And as you're working, and if you have any questions that come up, be sure to jot those questions down for Carrie and Jesse, because those will be great to bring to those working sessions where you'll get to share your screen and walk through building out your template or asking questions regarding a template that you built during the off time. As a reminder, these are the subjects that we went through today. We created a template. We talked about using a template to send an envelope. And then we also hit on template management. Coming up, we have the Power Forms 101 session where we'll expand on a lot of the concepts that we talked about today, and we'll talk about making your templates self-service for your recipients. As opposed to them waiting on an email invitation from you, they can click on a link and fill out a template on demand, which is a really cool concept. We'll also get those working sessions scheduled with your school. Again, you can reach out to Carrie and Jesse for those. But we have reached the end of my structured content. We have about 5.5 minutes left, so I'm happy to answer any remaining questions that come up. So I'll pause and see if there's anything that's coming through. I see a question that was sent to me directly. It says, we are planning to use separate DocuSign accounts for departments within the university. Would templates be shareable from these separate accounts, such as HR or admissions? Carrie, do you know if they're going to be using DocuSign admin or org admin?
Yes, they will. and regardless if they do, so they are doing that, but regardless, you can still export from one account, whether it's demo to demo, demo to production, production to demo. So you can share that. Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, Terry, you can use that same method that we talked about in class where you're able to download the template's contents to that zip file and then easily just move that file to the other account, for example. Of course. Any other questions? Hopefully everybody's wheels are turning a little bit as to how you might begin to use templates Again, a great, homework item after class would be to just get into your demo account and maybe practice starting to build out a template. And of course, if you get stuck, that's totally okay. Just jot down any questions and you can bring those to that working session as well.
And on Monday is the Power Forms session. And Power Forms is something you're going to be very interested in as well. The vast majority of the schools we work with use Power Forms for a number of items. At its core, it's really just a URL that calls a template. That's why the template creation session you just sat through today is so incredibly important. But Power Forms does provides a lot of opportunities. So it sounds like we do not have any other questions. So we'll give you back the gift of time, 4 minutes. So thank you, everyone. I'll get a copy of this recording out to Rich and Terry as soon as it's available, and I will be providing you the PowerPoint deck. And thank you, everyone, for your participation. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks, everybody.